What was hidden? If you believe that this world still holds truths beyond explanation, if you've ever felt, somewhere in the quietest moments, that something is trying to be spoken, and if you've ever sensed that some truths are simply too powerful to ever be allowed into the light, then today's story might be the one that makes you stop, not out of fear, but to question everything you've ever believed. You're listening to Who Would You Be?, where the unexplainable is retold as if you were living it. And if what you're about to hear gives you chills, yet you can't stop listening, just remember, you are not alone. Because today, we'll begin a journey never officially acknowledged. A journey to the other side, through the eyes of a man no one could ever explain. 1. The man who saw through time. His name was Wolff Messing, a strange figure who, in the Soviet Union of the 1940s to 1960s, was both respected and feared by scientists and officials alike. He was not a scholar, had no university degree, never published a scientific paper. And yet, there was something about him, so compelling that even the KGB scheduled official experiments. Messing wasn't just a psychic. He was what they called a seer, someone who saw the invisible layers of reality most people only sense through intuition. Once, he read aloud a person's secret bank account number, never spoken aloud to anyone. Another time, he boarded a train without a ticket, looked the conductor in the eye, and made him believe he'd already seen it. Scientists placed EEG monitors on his head, trying to study his brainwaves during these focus states. The results showed bizarre patterns, unlike waking, dreaming, or even hypnotic states. Adolf Hitler ordered his assassination after Messing predicted the Führer's downfall. Stalin called him a man who should be kept far from the public, because Messing held the one thing those in power fear the most: truth, uncontrolled, unfiltered, and utterly unwilling to stay silent. But there was one thing Messing never shared, never mentioned in any lecture, paper, or public account: a singular experience, recorded only by hand, in a trembling script, in a worn notebook hidden deep within the Novosibirsk Research Institute. A manuscript never published, and within it, he described the one journey that even he feared: a crossing to the other side of life. The seer meets the departed. On a bitter February day in 1962, Wolff Messing made an unusual request. He wanted to be left completely alone in what used to be the abandoned morgue room of the Moscow Institute of Psychiatry. No monitoring devices, no official observers, only a hidden camera mounted on the ceiling and a notebook. The doctors assumed he was preparing to meditate or attempting a new form of internal hypnosis. But Messing gave no explanations. He simply said, "I want to try one final thing. If I come back, you may ask." He entered. The room was freezing, his breath visible in the air. Cracked concrete walls, a metal table in the center. No windows, no sound. Messing sat down, placed his hands on his knees, closed his eyes. The camera footage showed him beginning to tremble around the 7-minute mark. By 18 minutes, his fingers had curled inwards, as if frozen. But the rest of his body didn't move. At 43 minutes, his breathing accelerated, like someone falling freely in a dream. And at minute 58, he opened his eyes, his forehead soaked in sweat, his lips pale, pupils fully dilated. He didn't say, "I'm okay." He didn't ask if anyone was watching. He simply said, "I crossed over. And the other side is not what we think." Immediately after, he asked for a glass of water, a pen, and his notebook. He wrote nonstop for nearly 2 hours. No one was allowed to enter. When he finally stepped out, Messing left the notebook on the table and said, "Don't read it alone, and don't publish it, unless the world is ready." What he saw on the other side. The first page of that notebook begins with a line that makes any reader pause and breathe. There is no gate, no hellfire, no radiant heaven, only your own thoughts, becoming the world you now live in. Messing wrote that the afterlife resembled no religious vision ever created by humankind. There were no souls lining up to be judged, no fluttering white wings, and absolutely no flames, no devils. Instead, he described a field of consciousness, a wave layer into which the soul drifts after leaving the body. And within that field, the only thing that remains is not your body, your name, or even your clear memories, but the density of pure emotion within you. Those who carry resentment, anger, or fear enter a realm entirely of their own making, an unending loop of pain where everything they fear most materializes from their own subconscious. In contrast, those who carry love, compassion, or even just the ability to let go, they fall into a lighter plane. There is no one with them. Yet not for a second do they feel alone. Messing wrote, "The other side doesn't treat us as we deserve. It treats us the way we have treated ourselves. Souls that refuse to move on." According to Wolff Messing's final notebook, not all souls are able to slide into the next layer. It's not because they are rejected or imprisoned. It's because they refuse to let go. Messing called them anchored souls. They belong neither to the world of the living nor fully to the world beyond. They exist in a suspended in-between, where space becomes memory and time becomes a loop. There was a child he once saw, a small spirit wandering the halls of an abandoned hospital. The boy didn't know he had passed. He simply kept calling for his mother. Every door that opened brought fresh disappointment. Every echoing footstep filled him with hope, only to be crushed again. And so, he kept running, endlessly. There was also a soldier, wearing tattered gear, body caked in mud, gripping an invisible rifle. He didn't know the war had ended long ago. In his mind, he was still fighting, still protecting his comrades, even though he was shooting into a void he himself had created. Messing wrote, "He had been dead for 40 years, but in his mind, only 3 minutes had passed." And then, an old woman, bent back, trembling hands placing a bowl of rice on the table. Every day she prepared a full meal, in a house that had been demolished decades earlier. No one ever came to eat, but she repeated the ritual, every motion, every quiet call to dinner, as if on an endless loop of memory. Messing wrote, "These souls are not trapped by karma, by sin, or by curses. They are trapped in the final image of their life. They won't release it. And it is that refusal that keeps them behind. Crossing over is not a miracle. No one opens the door for you. Only when you unclench your hands, only when you untie that invisible thread, can you take the next step." The final layer, emptiness. In one of his deepest meditative states, what Messing himself called the final slide, he described falling into a space where there was no longer anything that could be called a world. No light, no darkness, no body, no name, only a vast whiteness, with no beginning, no end. And yet, he wasn't afraid. There was no confusion, no urge to escape, because in that place, though it had no form, there was something warm. Messing didn't call it God. He didn't call it the source. He simply wrote, "I felt understood, not through words, but through something far deeper, as if every mistake, every secret, every hidden part of me had been seen, And still, I was loved. He called it the empty point, a space where all souls melt into each other, where there is no longer me and you, no good person or bad person, only unconditional acceptance. And there, he was no longer Wolff, no longer a psychic, no longer human. But I had never felt more whole. Why he never revealed it. What's strange is that after his profound experience, Wolff Messing never became fanatical. He didn't start a spiritual movement. He didn't publish a book preaching revelations. In fact, he never again mentioned what he had written in that notebook. When a journalist who knew about it once asked why, Messing simply smiled, shook his head, and replied softly, "Humanity isn't ready to know what it truly is after death, because it hasn't yet learned how to truly live." The manuscript was entrusted to a close scientific confidant, then locked away. In a wooden box, deep within the archives of the Novosibirsk Research Institute. Many in the scientific community dismissed it as hallucination, a tired mind's final illusion. But others believed the opposite. One nurse, who had been there the day Messing stepped out of that freezing room, later said, "I don't know what he saw, but when he came out, the air around him didn't feel like it belonged to this world anymore, as if a part of the other side had followed him out." The Translator and the Forbidden Story. In 1991, a leaked copy of Wolff Messing's notebook reached a small publishing house in Poland. It was assigned to a translator, a 38-year-old woman, former philosophy professor, and seasoned Russian language expert. But after just 43 pages, she stopped, returned the manuscript, refused any payment, and left behind a handwritten letter, its lines slightly trembling. "I cannot translate another word, not out of fear, but because I understand now. I need to visit my mother, not with my feet, but with forgiveness." The manuscript was immediately pulled. The publishing house quietly deleted all related files. No trace of the original remains. Only a few fragments, whispered through closed circles of metaphysical researchers, survive to this day. And now, you've just heard one of those fragments. The seer's final message. In the very last line of his notebook, Wolff Messing didn't leave a message for any organization, ideology, or religion, but for every single soul still alive. Do not fear death. It is not an end, but a door. If you walk through it with an empty heart, you will be filled. But if you carry hatred, fear, and obsession, you will create your own hell. Dear friend, if this story left you silent for even a moment, share it. Somewhere out there, someone may need to hear what Messing was never allowed to say aloud. And if you believe that truth, no matter how difficult, deserves to be told, then don't forget to subscribe to Who Would You Be? We don't tell stories for entertainment. We tell them to remind you. Live truthfully, so that when you cross to the other side, you won't need to carry anything but peace.